With today being the final day before free agency starts, a lot of moves with player options, team options, and even players renegotiating deals came down to some deadlines today. So we're going to break down and explore all of that, plus two trades that have also gone through the wire as well. A lot of moves have been going through this NBA offseason, and tomorrow free agency does officially kick off, where it's just going to be a complete whirlwind. So without further ado, let's dive in. Let's explore these moves. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section, and let's get into it. So the first move that we're going to discuss was one that happened yesterday, and it happened after I recorded the video, so that's why I've postponed this one to go up a little bit later here, and luckily I did because a lot more stuff happened later this afternoon / evening. But regarding the trade that happened yesterday, we saw the Thunder and the Wizards do a deal in which they sent Dillon Jones and a second-round pick to the Washington Wizards for Colby Jones. And a lot of people were confused why this deal did happen, and it was due to the fact that the Thunder, with drafting Brooks Barnhizer and Thomas Sorber in the draft this year and moving Brooks to a two-way spot, had one spot over in their roster. They had 16 guys, and with wanting to bring back Jalen Williams and AJ Mitchell, which we'll get into a little bit what they did with them, clearly they had to move off a roster spot to bring in Thomas Sorber. And in doing so, they sent away Dillon Jones to a team in Washington where he could grow and have that opportunity, and in return taking a guy in Colby Jones, who obviously they had no relation with, and obviously waived him instead of waiving one of their guys. I like this move from Sam Presti, obviously for the Wizards. They obviously are getting a younger piece in Dillon Jones, who could be a nice little fit, and Colby Jones wasn't really working out for him. And for Colby Jones, I wish nothing but the best of luck. Maybe he can find himself on another team or potentially a two-way or G League to kind of work himself back up to that guaranteed contract. But nonetheless, for the Thunder, it was just clearing a roster spot and doing good for one of their players that won an NBA championship. So let's dive in and let's talk about the moves today. So like I mentioned, the first move that really did come through was Jalen Williams, J-Dub, and he signed an extension here with the Oklahoma City Thunder, a well-deserving one as well. I believe it was 3 years, $42 million. I'm pulling it up on my phone as we speak right now. 3 years, 24, excuse me. Got those numbers mixed up. 24 million, so around $8 million, which is solid. They declined his team option and negotiated a long-term deal. Obviously, Jalen Williams, not J-Dub, but the other Jalen Williams from Arkansas, is a solid big man in their rotation. Someone that obviously has gotten along with the team and has formed a great culture identity as well with them, and was just someone they wanted to bring back on a cheap contract. Not bad by Oklahoma City for bringing him back on an $8 million deal. I like this for them. And then the Thunder later on in the day went and signed AJ Mitchell, their other guy on a team option that they declined, on a new 3-year contract worth $9 million after declining his player option. So a $3 million deal for AJ Mitchell as a third point guard. Obviously $8 million here for Jalen Williams. And now the Oklahoma City Thunder have their 15-man roster, barring any other moves, which I don't see really coming through here for the squad. This is what they're going to be running back, basically the same core that they had, and just adding Thomas Sorber and replacing him with Dillon Jones. It's going to be interesting. Obviously, the Thunder, NBA champions, best team in the league last year, still are going to be staying dominant, and it's going to be cool to see if they can, kind of defeat the curse of back-to-back champions, because we haven't seen that in a long time, or it will be cool to see what this team can look like compared to some of those other squads in the league. Next was the big contract from the big dog, LeBron James, and this one was wild that happened today because LeBron James opted in to his 52.6 player option, and Rich Paul added that LeBron knows the Lakers are building for the future, but he values a realistic chance of winning it all. So by saying that and taking the player option in, it drew a lot of people to question, will LeBron get traded? And what teams could ultimately trade for LeBron now? We've never seen LeBron on the trade market, and no one's really been able to pinpoint his value. I don't necessarily know if this means a trade for LeBron. I do think there was some other moves with the Lakers as well, which we're not going to be going over declinings of player options. I'll mention it just over here that the Lakers did, Dorian Finney-Smith declined his player option, so that's going to be questionable for the Lakers with what they're doing, right? But I'm not going to be going over the other ones as well, but that will go over when those players do sign their deals, and we'll mention how they declined their option and what they decided to do. But for the Lakers here, LeBron It's a little bit of a question mark of a pull for saying that quote, but also taking the 52.6. You would think he would take a little bit of a pay cut if he obviously wanted to chance to win it all. So that makes you think maybe he could be on the trade market. There are rumors of it, dating back to last offseason, even last trade deadline. There was jokings and rumors about it. So I have to keep an eye out on LeBron James and some plausible teams. Like I said, I think it would be a little bit difficult, but teams have obviously mentioned like the Heat, the Warriors, the Cavs, those three obviously kind of being the linkages with Curry, or then potentially going back to his other two places where he did play. But ultimately, I don't really see it being realistic. We'll have to see what the other moves from the Lakers do signal, and who knows? We saw Luka get traded last year, so I wouldn't say anything is out of the picture, but I would say it's very highly unlikely. And who knows? This could be LeBron's last year. He didn't sign a 1+1. He only signed a 1-year deal, so this is something to keep an eye on. Now, this player did not get a negotiation. This is just a bad thing to happen. The U.S. District Attorney is investigating Detroit Pistons guard Malik Beasley on allegations of gambling related to NBA games and prop bets. And he was scheduled to get a 3-year, $42 million contract, a $14 million deal with them. And now this isn't looking great for a guy in Malik Beasley that was very efficient these last two seasons. I don't know what it is with players and getting in trouble right before their contracts. We saw Miles Bridges a couple of seasons ago do it. We also saw Jontay Porter get in trouble with betting, and now Malik Beasley. I'm just going to keep it short with Malik Beasley. We'll have to wait and see. He's most likely just going to sit in free agency dealing with this case resting over him until he's proved either innocent or guilty. If he's proved innocent, we'll have to see what teams do take a risk on him, but probably won't be a long-term risk because of the allegations that were provided with him. But, yeah. Very, very tough for the Pistons because now they have to kind of look around and try to figure out what they want to do on the other end. But for Malik Beasley, it's even worse because, dude, you could have had $14 million a year, man. Just tough. Alrighty, and yesterday we mentioned the Naz Reid extension coming in for the Timberwolves at 5 years, $125 million. And today they also intended to sign Julius Randle to stay in Minnesota. He's getting a 3-year, $100 million deal with a player option in the 27-28 season. This is a very good deal for Julius Randle, in my opinion. He was able to step up and deliver as that secondary player for the Minnesota Timberwolves in the playoffs. And a lot of people are obviously saying that the Timberwolves got a little bit of an easier road to the Western Conference Finals with bringing back Naz Reid, adding Julius Randle, and still having some key insulators on the squad. I don't think that this team built right now is to win an NBA championship, but with some reconstruction with Anthony Edwards still being a young superstar, I do think with this core, they can win a championship. So keeping a guy in Julius Randle, I think, is very, 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 very key. With their drafting of Rocco Zakarski and John Berenger, I thought they were going to lose one of these guys, but maybe that's not the case. Maybe they're just being a little bit safe. Maybe they have a deal with Rudy. That's how they're intending to shed salary, or maybe there's a possible way for Rudy to be gone going into next season, and that's why they've locked these guys up, because they do not want to lose them. But ultimately, for the Minnesota Timberwolves, a team that still wants to stay relevant, a team that still wants to be a top-tier contender in the West, this is what you have to do. You have to put your money where your mouth is, and paying a guy in Julius Randle and Naz Reid in back-to-back days definitely shows that. The one thing that this does also allude to is that guy in Nikhil Alexander-Walker. A lot of teams are expected to be pursuing with their mid-level exception, is most likely going to be gone from the Minnesota Timberwolves, as the Timberwolves aren't going to have enough money to offer that to him, and that's going to be tough for them to lose some defense at their wing position. We'll have to see what the Timberwolves do out there in the free agency market, maybe to stack that up with some guys on better minimum contracts, or potentially on the trade market as well. And then we had another trade, and this was the only trade of today so far. We'll knock on wood here because it's 11:34 p.m., so hopefully nothing comes through late. But Colin Sexton had been traded from the Utah Jazz to the Charlotte Hornets alongside a second-round pick for Jusuf Nurkic. Really, really puzzling move. This was one very resemblant to the Bulls ones, where people see it and go, that's it? There's nothing more? Colin Sexton, a lot of people thought had great value, immense value. He was someone that was talked about last offseason, talked about at the trade deadline. The Jazz just never moved off of him. And maybe his value just wasn't there. Maybe it's the Jazz just trying to sell low so they can tank because they don't have a room for a guy in Colin Sexton. But I feel like a lot of teams are probably kicking themselves because they feel like they could have gotten this guy, and when they find out it went for Yusuf Nurkic, no offense to Yusuf Nurkic, a starting level center, they're just kind of like, wow, that's kind of bad, because a guy like Colin Sexton is so much more impactful for his team, I think, in my opinion. And for the Jazz, they have now Walker Kessler, Yusuf Nurkic, and John Collins, three bigs that can't shoot and can only rebound and can't space the floor. I don't really know what their main plan is for their front court. There's got to be some more stuff kind of cooking up behind the scenes over there. But obviously, both players are expiring deals. For the Utah Jazz, like I mentioned, you're trying to move off Colin Sexton, I guess, because you want to develop Walter Clayton and all these other young guards, so it makes sense. But I'm sure you could have gotten off of him at the trade deadline or a little bit earlier and gotten more value. So it's a little bit of a bad grade from them. They got to do better with that asset managing, in my opinion. Sell off some of these guys, because once again, John Collins, Lauri Markkanen, even Walker Kessler's been getting calls from Mad Long. Like, they should really look to move off of these guys if they're gonna strip down and tank and try to get AJ DeBansta or build with Ace Bailey and Walter Clayton. Like, I don't know what they're doing. For the Hornets, this is an A1. This is an A+, man. Give them their credit. They've been absolutely swindling, making some good moves here so far. In the draft, in my opinion, they were one of my winners. So if you missed that video, go check that out. But I really liked what they did this offseason. They got rid of the contract in Mark Williams that they desperately didn't need at center. They brought in a young guy in Ron Kalkbrenner. They drafted Zion James from Duke, teammate of Con Knippel, their number 1 overall pick, one that they felt very confidently was going to fit into their offense. And they also drafted Liam McNeely as well, who's another solid shooter, someone that they very resembled of Dalton Connect, and someone that they tried to trade for at the deadline. So they got their pieces on offense. They have LaMelo. They have Brandon Miller. Now they just added Colin Sexton, a combo guard who can play the 1 and 2 depending on what lineups this team wants to run or who's on the bench. But not only just that, for a team that's been notoriously known for dealing with injuries and, not being able to hit their full potential because of that, they now have a guy in Colin Sexton for if a guy like LaMelo does go down, he can step up and take that starting role and actually be an impact for this team and really help them take over. I think he's going to fit perfectly into Charles Lee's system. He loves those hungry dogs, those guys that fight for loose balls, those guys that play with so much effort on the floor, and you can really see that with a guy in Colin Sexton. When he goes and slams the ball, it just emphasizes with power of just how aggressive he is playing, and I think he's going to fit so well into this Hornets system. Once again, the Hornets only had to give up Yusuf Nurkic, and they got a second-round pick alongside Colin Sexton. Yeah, man, got to give them their credit here. Getting off a contract that they brought in last year for Vasily Micic and Cody Martin, which then turned into Colin Sexton, you got to give them credit. Alrighty, and the next one is James Harden, as this one was a little bit telling, but he declined his player option and re-signed with the Clippers on a 2-year, $81.5 million contract. He lines up his deal now alongside Kawhi Leonard. So for these next 2 seasons, it does seem like the Clippers are going to be going out for that all-in push, all-out contention mode with James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, Vika Zubac, and whoever else they can add to this team, Norman Powell, any of these other wings or anything like that. I feel like this Clippers team is going to be very aggressive out there in the market or even out there on the trade aspect as well to really beefing up this roster and to put itself into that spot, because they just brought a new stadium in, and I know that their new owner really wants to be competitive and win a championship with this core. They couldn't do it with Paul George, but now they got James Harden and Kawhi, and last year they proved a lot of people wrong, including myself, making the playoffs. And even though they couldn't get out of the first round, they brought the Denver Nuggets to an incredible 7-game series, and the Nuggets were one of the better teams in the NBA last year, so in the Western Conference. So I think if a team like the Clippers can, just get a little bit better there on the grand scheme of things, I think this team could be in those conversations and being back into a Western Conference Finals, which would be very, very fun for their fans and for guys like James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. James Harden, who hasn't won a ring yet, Kawhi Leonard, who has won a couple. It would be nice to see a team like the Clippers kind of get to that moment, because since Kawhi has been there, we've all been waiting for him to reach the finals with this squad, and I really would like to see that as an NBA fan. Alrighty, and then the Bucks made a move where they brought back Bobby Portis on a 3-year, $44 million contract with a player option in the 27-28 year. Obviously, Bobby Portis has been a key point of this Bucks squad, but has also been mentioned in trade rumors for a little while with this team. So very interesting to see him come back, take a little bit of a discount. I'm not really that shocked. Obviously, he likes playing in Milwaukee. He likes playing with Giannis Antetokounmpo, and with the Milwaukee Bucks, he's been able to blossom and be his best player. But for the Bucks, who are losing a lot of key free agents. Kevin Porter Jr. declined his option. Gary Trent Jr. is a free agent. Brook Lopez is most likely not coming back. Damian Lillard's going to be out. It's very, very intriguing to see that Bobby Portis does go back and doesn't chase going to another spot to kind of at least win or be a little bit better. So maybe there's some optimism behind the Milwaukee Bucks and some of their moves that they can do to really reshape this roster. But if not, then Bobby Portis is going to be helping Giannis try to make the play-in, which will be kind of cool to see this season. But Bobby Portis deserves his deal, man. He's a very solid role player and respected player. Next is Jabari Smith, and he got a contract extension. That is a big one, 5-year, $122 million contract extension. This is a serious key for the Rockets. Not only do they have the non-tax mid-level, but inking a guy in Jabari Smith is just going to help this team for the future and just having secured contracts down the line. Because even with adding Kevin Durant and restructuring Fred VanVleet's deal, this team still needs these young guys to be on this core roster to be competitive and help out in down low with rebounding and defense. And not only just that, but then if they need to make a move down the line, they need to have these contracts, have some flexibility to go out and be more aggressive, right? They can't lose guys in Jabari Smith and stuff like that. Jabari ultimately hasn't really panned out to be that dominant player here so far for the Rockets. He hasn't stood out to be this really high-key superstar, but he's been quality on the defensive end, like I mentioned, solid aggressive rebounder and shot blocker, and I think alongside Kevin Durant in some small ball lineups where he is running the 5, he is going to be pretty effective for this team, if not running alongside with KD at the 3. He can also help out with Alperen Sengun down low in the paint. So a guy in Jabari Smith, in my opinion, maybe not worth this type of contract, maybe a slight overpay, but a team like the Rockets can give him this money. And for a rookie scale contract, once again, if he looks pretty solid and he's behind a guy in Kevin Durant and they need to trade him because they're creeping up into salary issues or apron issues, then some teams will be interested in him on that value contract. And then the last news of the night, and probably the most shocking, DeAndre Eaton has been waived, ladies and gentlemen. He is no longer on the Portland Trail Blazers. He is gone. The Trailblazers said they're going to buy you out and you're going to become a free agent. This is very interesting now because the free agent market isn't really the ripest this year. There's not a lot of big names, and DeAndre Eaton might now be the biggest name hitting that market. The Blazers drafted Hanson Yang, a little bit of a stretch in the draft, but with making that selection and taking Klingon last year, it was very clear and evident that guy DeAndre Ayton, maybe even Robert Williams, was not going to be here long term. So I'm guessing the Blazers probably explored the trade market for a guy DeAndre Ayton, tried to figure out if they could trade him at $33 million, and ultimately came to the solution that no team was willing to budge or was asking for too much for them to take on, or in return to attach picks or something like that for DeAndre Ayton. The team just said, screw it, we're going to buy you out and just get off this contract. This ultimately will help the Blazers by shedding this money here, but for DeAndre Ayton, it now gives him some new life to go pursue some stuff in free agency on now going to be his third team in the NBA. And obviously, the main kind of team everyone talks about is the Lakers. I don't know if he's going to be the best fit, but they need a center, so it would make sense. I think the Magic would be a pretty cool fit as well. I've talked about that in the past, but I don't know if they're really going to have the salary to go out there, and with them still having some free agents out there, particularly at the center position, they might want to bring those guys back instead. People have mentioned, the Warriors needing a center, maybe the Celtics, but I don't see the Celtics being interested. They still got to shed some money to even give him the MLE, and that's what I think DeAndre Ayton probably will get here in free agency. Roughly around 14, maybe even a little bit more, $15-16 million out in free agency on like a 2-year deal, and it's going to be interesting to see where he goes. Ultimately, Ayton, the number 1 overall pick, hasn't been able to live up to his standards here in the NBA because of his due of laziness. Ultimately, in my opinion, he just doesn't really try out there on the court. He half the time, but when he is, he's dominating, as he does say, and he does dominate when he is playing at his best. So we'll have to see where Ayton goes. Once again, he was a name that I kind of figured would be on the move. Didn't expect it to be going into free agency. I expected him to be on the trade market, but for the Blazers, this is a pretty wild thing to see. But I'm not the most shocked because I expected something to happen with the center room there. So, like I mentioned, we're not going over declined options. There were a lot of, non-guaranteed other team deals that were mentioned as well, like Nick Richards got picked up. J.D. Davison got picked up, right? But there's just so many of those that ultimately I'm not going to be able to get over every single team's, smaller guy here in free agency. So covering all the bigger names kind of in the lot. Ultimately, when we do our offseason breakdowns or at the end of free agency, kind of look at these teams and who stayed and who left, we will go over those, team options and stuff like that. But at this moment, I'm not really going to be diving into those. Once we get those new graphics from Bobby Marks from ESPN, we get to get those little new updates, then it'll be a little bit easier to kind of analyze that and show that to you guys. Because, like I mentioned, some of these people that got picked up on non-guaranteed contracts or even team contracts could get traded in the next couple of days. So it's not really, I think, worth my mention, I think, to really bring it up, because anything can really happen. And if that does happen, then I'll bring it up then. But once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. The offseason's getting fully underway here now, and with tomorrow free agency starting at 6 p.m., that's when people that are unrestricted free agents now can negotiate contracts and sign with teams. So I do expect teams to have some deals maybe lined up, but if not, because of the tampering that has happened, maybe we do see some deals trickle in 6:30, 7, 8 o'clock, right around that time, to really get those finalizations in. We'll have some breakdowns going over that. I'm sure there'll be some more trades coming through the wire as well, within some teams still trying to shed some salary and teams still trying to, I guess, buy in on some veterans or teams selling some players. So we'll definitely have some more content revolving around trades, offseason. I'm probably going to be doing these videos every single night, going up into and uploading them that night as well, going over what happened in the day. And then unless anything big happens, right, like a big trade, maybe we'll put that by itself. But once again, like I said, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate you guys watching these videos. If you do enjoy, let me know what you think down below in the comment section and hit that subscribe button. I'll catch you guys later. Have a great rest of your night, and peace out.